I told my fiancée her male bestie was too involved in our wedding planning. She said, "He's my soulmate. He gets a say in everything." I replied, "Okay." I let them plan the entire wedding together, and then I served her annulment papers at the rehearsal dinner, saying, "You should marry the person you planned this with." I'm a structural engineer. My job is to look at a design and identify the points of weakness. I analyze load paths, stress tolerances, and foundational integrity. A skyscraper and a marriage are not so different. If the core structure is compromised, the entire thing is destined for a catastrophic collapse, no matter how beautiful the facade. For the last 3 years, I believed the structure I was building with my fiancée, Chloe, was sound. We were a good team. I was the steady, logical one. She was the vibrant, creative one. Our wedding was in 6 months. The venue was booked, the deposits were paid. I was happy. I was all in. I had no idea that a fatal foundational flaw was about to be revealed. The flaw had a name, Dylan. Dylan is Chloe's male bestie, her platonic soulmate. He's a theater director, a man who thrives on drama and considers the real world a minor inconvenience to his artistic vision. Their bond is, in a word, suffocating. He is the first person she calls with any news, good or bad. His opinion is the only one that truly matters. I had always accepted their friendship because I'm not a jealous man and I trusted Chloe completely. I saw their bond as a quirky feature, not a structural defect. The defect became a full-blown crack 2 weeks ago. We were sitting down for our first official wedding planning session. I had spreadsheets, budget projections, timelines. I was ready to build this thing with her. "Before we start," she said, her eyes shining with an excitement that made my stomach clench, "I have a surprise. I've asked Dylan to be our official wedding consultant." I just stared at her. "Our what?" "He has such an incredible eye for aesthetics," she gushed. "He's going to help us with everything, the flowers, the color palette, the music. It'll be our little team." I took a deep, steadying breath. I am a man who believes in clear, direct communication. "Chloe," I began, my voice calm and reasonable, "I love that you and Dylan are so close. But this is our wedding, mine and yours. I want to plan it with you. I don't think we need a third person making decisions about the first day of our marriage." The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, hard defensiveness. "You don't get it," she said, her voice sharp. "Dylan isn't a third person. He's my soulmate. He understands the vision. He gets me in a way you don't. He gets a say in everything." He's my soulmate. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just a poor choice of words. It was a declaration of allegiance. She was telling me, to my face, that her primary emotional and spiritual partnership was with another man. Our marriage, it seemed, was just a practical merger. A joint venture, where I was the silent financial partner, and Dylan was the chief creative officer. The structural engineer in my head started running frantic calculations. The foundation was not just cracked, it was fraudulent. A marriage is a contract between two people, built on a promise of primary partnership. She had just admitted, before the contract was even signed, that she had no intention of honoring that core principle. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. You don't argue with a compromised foundation, you condemn the building. I looked at her, my face a mask of calm acceptance. "Okay," I said. The relief on her face was immediate. She thought she had won. She thought I had accepted my secondary role. "Oh, good," she said, clapping her hands together. "I knew you'd understand. This is going to be so much fun." For the next 5 months, I faded into the background. I became the perfect, supportive, check-writing fiancé. I watched as she and Dylan, her soulmate, planned their perfect wedding. They spent hours huddled over fabric swatches. They went to cake tastings together. They chose the first dance song, a deeply obscure indie track that I had never heard, but that was apparently their song from a road trip they took in college. I just smiled, I nodded, and I paid the deposits. I paid for the venue they chose, the photographer they hired, the ridiculously expensive floral arrangements Dylan insisted on. I paid for it all with my own credit card, meticulously documenting every single transaction. And while they were planning the wedding, I was planning the demolition. I went to see a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer, an annulment lawyer. I explained the situation, her exact words. He was a sharp, old-school guy, and his eyes lit up. "Soulmate," he said, testing the word. "That's a hell of a word. That's not a friendship. That's a competing spiritual contract. We can argue fraudulent inducement. She misrepresented the very nature of the union she was asking you to enter." This is good. This is very, very good. For the next few months, while she was sending me pictures of bridesmaid dresses, I was quietly gathering my evidence. I saved every email where she prioritized Dylan's opinion over mine. I documented every wedding-related expense I paid for. My lawyer began drafting the annulment papers. She thought I was a silent partner in her dream wedding. She had no idea I was just the engineer, patiently waiting for the scheduled demolition. And the demolition was scheduled for the rehearsal dinner. Update 1. The 5 months leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in emotional detachment. I was an actor playing the role of a happy, compliant fiancé, and I deserved an Oscar. I attended the food tastings and nodded when Dylan explained why the sea bass was more authentic than the steak I preferred. I sat through meetings with the wedding planner, a woman who, after the first 10 minutes, directed all of her questions to Chloe and Dylan. I was a ghost at my own wedding planning. My only active role was financial, and I played it perfectly. Every deposit, every payment was made from my accounts on my credit cards. I kept a meticulous file of every receipt, every invoice. It was a multi-thousand-dollar paper trail that led directly and exclusively to me. Chloe and Dylan were in a state of blissful, creative ecstasy. They were the co-directors of the grandest production of their lives, and I was the silent, reliable executive producer. They would have long, excited phone calls about lighting schemes and seating charts while I was in the next room, quietly reviewing the annulment petition with my lawyer. The final piece of the legal puzzle was the marriage license. We had to obtain it a few weeks before the ceremony. We went to the county clerk's office together. As I signed my name on that document, I felt a strange sense of calm. For Chloe, this was a bureaucratic step towards her dream wedding. For me, it was the final piece of evidence. It was the legal contract that I was about to prove she had fraudulently induced me into signing. The week before the wedding was a flurry of activity. Family was flying in, friends were arriving. Chloe was radiant, the perfect bride-to-be. She was so caught up in the drama and excitement of her own production that she never once noticed the cold, quiet resolve in my eyes. The rehearsal dinner was held in the private dining room of a historic hotel. It was an elegant, candle-lit affair for 50 of our closest friends and family. My parents were there, happy and proud. Her parents were there, beaming. Dylan, of course, was the master of ceremonies, a role he had assigned to himself. He fluttered around the room, accepting compliments on his beautiful event. I just sat at the head table, next to my fiancée, and I watched. I watched her laugh with him, touch his arm, look at him with a familiar, easy intimacy that she rarely showed me anymore. They were the happy couple. I was just the guy paying the bill. After the main course, Dylan stood up to give the first toast. It was a long, rambling, self-indulgent speech about his and Chloe's profound, unbreakable bond. He talked about their shared history, their inside jokes, their karmic connection. He ended by raising his glass to me. "And to Tom," he said with a magnanimous smile. "A good, stable guy who is lucky enough to be marrying my other half." The room applauded politely. Then it was my turn. I stood up, a champagne glass in my hand. I smiled warmly at the crowd. "Thank you, Dylan," I began. "That was a beautiful speech, and it brings me to what I wanted to talk about tonight, the topic of partnership." I looked at Chloe. She was smiling at me, her eyes shining. She thought I was about to give a gushing, romantic toast. "A marriage," I continued, my voice clear and steady, "is the ultimate partnership. It's a legal, financial, and spiritual union between two people. It's a promise of a shared future, a shared life, a shared soul. And the most important word in all of that is two." I paused, letting that sink in. I entered into this engagement, this partnership, in good faith. I believed I was one of two principal partners. But I've come to realize that I was mistaken. The planning of this wedding has been a profound education. I learned that my opinions were not required, that my input was not valued. I learned that the most important decisions about the first day of my marriage were to be made by a committee of two, of which I was not a member. The smiles in the room were starting to falter. A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Chloe's smile was gone, replaced by a look of wary confusion. "And so," I said, my voice ringing with a new hard authority, "I have been forced to reevaluate the terms of this partnership. And I have concluded that the contract is null and void due to a fundamental misrepresentation of the facts." As if on cue, a man in a simple suit, a process server I had hired, walked quietly into the room. He walked directly to the head table and placed a thick, legal-sized envelope directly in front of Chloe. She stared at it as if it were a snake. "Those," I said, my voice dropping to a quiet, devastating conclusion, "are annulment papers. I am petitioning the court to declare our marriage contract void on the grounds of fraud. You see, you cannot promise your soul to one person while your soulmate is another. That is a fraudulent contract." I then turned to Dylan, who looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "This is your wedding," I said to him. "You planned it, you designed it, you chose the colors, the music, the food. The only thing I contributed was the money, and I will be canceling every single check and disputing every single credit card charge in the morning." I placed my champagne glass untouched on the table. I looked at Chloe one last time. Her face was a mask of pure, abject horror. "You should marry the person you planned this with," I said. Then I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them in the stunning, absolute silence of the truth. Update 2. The immediate aftermath of the rehearsal dinner was, by all accounts, a scene of pure, unadulterated chaos. I didn't stick around to watch it, of course. I went directly from the hotel to my parents' house, where I had already moved my most important belongings. My phone was turned off. I wanted a night of complete and total peace. The story of what happened in that dining room came to me the next day from my best man, who had stayed behind out of a morbid sense of duty. He said that for a full minute after I left, the room was completely silent. Then, Chloe's mother let out a horrified shriek. All eyes turned to Chloe and Dylan. Chloe was apparently catatonic, just staring at the annulment papers. Dylan, the master of drama, tried to take control of the situation. He stood up and declared that I was a vindictive, unstable monster who was making up insane lies to get out of the wedding. It might have worked if not for Chloe's father. He was a quiet, serious man who, like me, valued honesty above all else. He stood up, walked over to his daughter and asked her one simple question, his voice shaking with a quiet rage. "Is it true? Did you call him your soulmate?" Chloe, sobbing and hysterical, apparently admitted that she had. And in that moment, her entire defense crumbled. Her father looked at Dylan with a look of pure contempt, told him to get away from his daughter, and then began the humiliating process of telling their 50 guests that the wedding was in fact off. The next morning, my phone was a war zone of missed calls and angry texts from Chloe's family. I ignored them all. My lawyer, however, did not. He spent the entire day on the phone with the various wedding vendors, the venue, the caterer, the florist. This is where my meticulous financial planning paid off. Because I had paid for everything with my own credit cards, and because the event was now canceled due to a clear breach of the engagement contract, fraudulent inducement, we were able to successfully dispute most of the charges. We provided the vendors with a copy of the annulment filing. The credit card companies, faced with a clear case of a contract that was void from the start, sided with us. We were able to claw back over 80% of the money I had spent. The remaining 20% was a loss I was more than willing to accept as the price of my freedom. Chloe's attempt to fight the annulment was short-lived and pathetic. Her lawyer, faced with my lawyer's detailed brief and the sworn affidavits from my parents and best man who had heard her soulmate comments, knew he had no case. An annulment based on fraud is a high bar to clear. But her own words had built the perfect ladder for us to climb. She had, on multiple occasions, declared her primary emotional and spiritual allegiance to another man, a clear misrepresentation of her intent to form an exclusive marital bond with me. They were forced to agree to the annulment. The marriage was declared legally void, as if it had never happened. There was no division of assets, no spousal support. We just walked away, our lives legally disentangled. Final update. It has been 6 months since I walked out of that rehearsal dinner. The legal battles are over, the dust has settled, and the final consequences have been delivered, not by me, but by the simple, unforgiving logic of the truth. The annulment was finalized 3 months ago. It is a clean, beautiful legal document that says my marriage to Chloe never existed. It is the most honest document our relationship ever produced. The fallout for Chloe and Dylan was, from what I've heard, catastrophic. Their soulmate connection, which had thrived in the exciting, secret world of their emotional affair, did not survive the harsh glare of public humiliation and real-world consequences. They reportedly had a massive, bitter falling out, each blaming the other for the destruction of their lives. He blamed her for being so foolish as to say the quiet part out loud. She blamed him for not being able to magically fix the mess they had created. Dylan's reputation as a charming, artistic director was shattered. The story of the rehearsal dinner made him look like a homewrecker and a fool. Chloe, disgraced in front of her entire family and social circle, was forced to move out of the apartment we had shared. The lease was in my name, of course, and move back in with her deeply disappointed parents. She lost her fiancé, her dream wedding, her home, her reputation, and her soulmate, all in one night. As for me, my life has been a study in quiet, deliberate reconstruction. I took the money I got back from the wedding deposits, and I invested it in myself. I took a month-long trip to South America, hiking in Patagonia, something I had always wanted to do but had always put off for the sake of our future. I learned a valuable lesson. A structure, whether it's a bridge or a relationship, is only as strong as its foundation. My relationship with Chloe was built on a lie, a fundamental fraud. I didn't destroy it. I just exposed the truth of its condition before it had a chance to collapse on top of me. Chloe wanted a wedding that was a grand, dramatic production, with her and her soulmate as the stars. She got her production. It was just a tragedy, not a romance. And in the final act, the quiet, no-nonsense engineer was the one who got to bring the whole theater down.